Hello, here we are once again with Mookie Tenembaum. We are exploring through these videos his philosophy, his disillusionism, and his misalgic theory about human behavior as a way of avoiding or preventing suffering. We are now trying week after week through these videos to analyze things that happen around us in a way to illustrate this philosophy, to apply some of the more abstract concepts we've been dealing with in this channel. And we are now approaching September 2021. We are now, as we were since the beginning, amidst the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. But we are going to try and focus today from a disillusionist point of view, from a misalgic point of view, in the effects this pandemic has on the way we relate to each other, on the way we interact as human beings under the effects of the pandemic, and the way in which these alterations in our social behavior may change things in general, even for a long time. So we are going to try and think the virus, the pandemic, but maybe from a interpersonal, from a social point of view, and see what happens.
Well, what happens, that will be interesting. What happens? Here we work on what happens. First of all, let me explain why this pandemic is different from all other pandemics. The issue in pandemics, the pandemics we know about are two really. The most famous one was the Black Death.
The Black Death.
The Black Death, and the other one, of course, was the influenza pandemic in 1918. Those two pandemics are the ones that we can see, and they differ from this pandemic in many ways. The first one is the kind of sickness you get from this pandemic. Lethality, this is the lowest, which one in lethality, no doubt. I mean, it kills only 2% of the people who get infected, and it's the higher the age, the higher the percentage, but it's about 2% of those infected. And the other big difference is that this sickness is invisible. I mean, there are photographs from the time of the pandemic in the times of the influenza pandemic, and you can see people really. I mean, people were dying in the streets. People, it was really, really bad. And in our case, it's invisible. People are okay, and once they get sick, they stay home. You don't see them. And once they have to go to hospital, again, you don't see them. In fact, nobody sees them because they are in the hospital and they are under quarantine, and nobody can see them. So it's invisible. And it's not only invisible, invisible in the way of invisibility, it's also the contagion. Contagion is always invisible, but it's not, but it's asymptomatic. Now, this is not the only sickness that transmits asymptomatically. One is HIV, and the other one is typhus in certain cases. None of them are part of a pandemic. Somebody could say that in the 80s, there was a pandemic of HIV. I seriously doubt we could look at it in that way. Anyway, it's a very different kind of sickness. Lethality in the HIV used to be 100%. Now the people who can get to treatment is zero. So it's gone as a pandemic. Even if it was, it's still not there. And the asymptomatic issue is this. I could be asymptomatic for two reasons. Let's say I'm sick. One is that I have, I'm just asymptomatic. Period. That's it. I curse the whole. I go through the whole COVID infection with no symptoms, and the other one is pre-symptomatic. That means I will get sick, but before I get sick, I transmit the sickness. Now, one of the things is it is so easy to get infected with this thing that you don't know who infected you. If it was HIV, in general, you know who infected you. It's not that difficult, and in this way, nobody knows really. I mean, it could be somebody in the state, it could be in the in the shop. It could be talking to my neighbor. It could be talking to my wife. I don't know. Somebody could have infected me, and there is no way I can find somebody to blame him or to point him. And this is interesting, not from my part, from the side of the one who is infected, but from the one who I have infected in my place. That person could not come back to me and say, you infected me. How do you know? This impunity, and this is exactly the word, this is it is a pandemic with a lot of impunity. Almost anybody, look, everybody can claim it's innocent, but on the other hand, everybody is suspected because of that, of being guilty. You don't know. So now I don't trust everybody who is in contact with me. I may not trust. I have to not trust if I don't want to get sick. First of all, what do you think about this?
I see how all these elements you are describing add up, as you say, to a mistrust in others, to reluctance to engage with others because of the invisibility, the impunity, and all the different consequences of this specific type of. I want to ask you about. Was I frozen?
No. Please go ahead.
Sorry. I saw a glitch there. But I want to ask you about a further difference I can see, and I think in a way it underlines our tendency to reject contact with others, to avoid society as such, which is that in this other example you were using, in HIV, the things I have to do to prevent contagion are things I don't want to do. I have to either disregard sex whatsoever or utilize condoms and prophylactics. In the case of this pandemic, I speak for myself at least, many of the things I had to do to prevent contagion in my mistrust of others, I think I rather enjoy. Not getting on a crowded subway or metro train is something I'm thankful for. Not having to go to different places I used to work in, it's something I enjoyed rather a lot. So is there a different level here in the way in which social contact will be affected? Since I don't want to say it this way, but not everything seems so bad. There are parts of this isolation, parts of these lockdowns that we could easily get used to.
Well, even in the case of HIV, when now, even if you get sick, you can, even if you have a sexual contact with somebody, and that person is infected with HIV, and you know that in the first 48 hours, you can take a certain group of drugs, and that's it, and you're off, and the problem is gone. Second thing you can do, of course, is you can you know that even if you get sick, there is a way you have to all your life take certain drug, but that's it. So even then, people don't even stop using condoms. So you know, and it is not interesting because we can use the HIV example for this case. There is all the time the promise that we go back to normal. The words were back to normal. Now, HIV showed you that there is no back to normal. This is not normal, even if it is the same risk, because, hey, when you had sex unprotected and you could get syphilis and gonorrhea, that existed. People were still doing a lot of sex without any condoms. Why? Because they say, I'll take an antibiotic. This case, it didn't work. It didn't work because for a long time, people got accustomed to that. And people were raised, whole generations are raised to using condom. Condom being as common as a pair of gloves. I mean, it's really very common. And it's sold in supermarkets and it's naturalized. Now, in the case of COVID, the certain things, and those are the things you didn't like to do. In the ones, there is a group of people who likes, as you say, to stay home, who prefers not to go to the office and listen to stupid jokes, maybe, or to or to his boss looking at him, or somebody leering at you. I mean, lots of reasons. Work is I mean, the office, yes, the place of work is a place you have to go. Work is an obligation. It's not it's not a duty. Yes, you have to go because you have to eat. But once that is solved, once you can stay home, and you get that, a certain amount of people, again, a significant percentage of people will choose maybe at least to stay most of the week home, as much as possible home, even if it's not total, if it is not, again, but think about all the businesses that have changed and you cannot make it back to normal, Florencio. The tourism business is dead. I understand it was a nice August and some people made a few dollars, but it doesn't work. I mean, like this is going to be a problem, and you cannot even. One of the things you could do in the past is plan things. Okay, so next summer I'll go to Morocco. The summer afterwards I'll take a cruise to Alaska. Yes, and then this does not exist. You cannot talk about next week or next 2 weeks. The British at some point were changing the countries in which if you were coming you had to quarantine, and they used to changing every 3 days, and that made it impossible to make any vacation. Last time they said, okay, for 3 weeks we don't change it. I hope the virus listens to them also. But it's so you have to give them, but this is not normal. It is very far from normality. Even when it is normal, it won't be normal.
From the point of view of personal sleepwalking and from the point of view of a collective sync, do you think we have reached, or we are about to reach, a point of no return in this sense, that even if they keep on trying to sustain stuff, there's no way to patch it up and no way to recover it?
There is no such a thing as a point of return. Every point is of no return. The more time it passes, the less it will look like the old normal. Any similarity will be a coincidence. We are going into a world in which you don't have any assurance of anything. You don't know. People were promised that once the vaccines will come, that's it. We'll go back to normal. And it didn't happen. It didn't happen not because the vaccine doesn't work. The vaccine works. And you should get vaccinated, if you ask me. And the lockdown works, of course. But the answer is nothing is perfect in this thing. And sometimes there are not too many choices. Now, if we have to live like this, and when I say like this, it's not with it, not with the virus, like this, in an uncertain, from uncertainty to uncertainty, we learn to sleepwalk in uncertainty. There is a way to sleepwalk in uncertainty. You will have to create your own very tight sleepwalk, and that will have a very strong influence on the sync. The sync is based on the sleepwalking of people. If people sleepwalk, if an important part of the population have to change the way they sleepwalk, let me give you one example of how worried are politicians about we not going back to our past. There used to be, and I had my critic about saying children do not transmit the virus, or they are much less than the rest. I thought, and I really thought until a few days ago, that the reason they were doing it, the only reason, was to make people send the children to school so they can go to work and then go back to normality, or to some kind of normality, of normalcy. But then I understood that there is even a second, more important thing. If children are contagious, you may not trust them. Your relationship with them will be 2 meters away. And that will have a terrible impact on society. In law, you cannot testify against your spouse. Never, ever. In all the countries, there is an exemption for you to. Why? Because you need that basic unit of society, the family, to work. So you should permit people to tell each other stories, to tell secrets, to tell difficult secrets, things that are very important, and then maybe a crime or a series of crimes. Yes, but society will crumble if couples will not trust each other. Imagine what will happen if that will happen with children. So this situation, and on the other hand, the whole thing is low lethality. You cannot see it. As we spoke at the beginning, all this and it, your eyes tells you one thing, and the television tells you something else.
But do you think this explains not only the particular case of children's as contagion vectors, but all these promises, all these announcements, all these efforts being made, I'd say all over the developed world, in order to keep things going? Do you think that in the long run, it's about the fear of society as we know it crumbling down?
I don't think things will crumble down. I believe that human beings will find a way to reconnect. But but on which conditions? This is the issue, and there will be people who will be left out. Okay, the economy. We spoke about it a few minutes ago. I told you the economy is not going to do whatever people think it should do. The economy will be, so they throw money. One of the interesting things I was reading that the stock market goes up all the time, and it used to be, the idea was that sentiment, how people felt, make the market up or down. I start thinking that the whole idea of the government is to do it the other way around. They pour money into the stock market, so the sentiment comes back to us. So we see, hey, everything is fine. If all the stock exchanges, if everything is going up, that means the business people think there is a future, and the future, and for all the companies. I'm afraid that the coming down of this will be, it will be again and again and again. We had 4 waves in different countries. Some countries had 5 waves of COVID. In each one of them, there was a promise that that's it. Now wait for the vaccines. And again, I'm in favor of vaccinate yourself. Take a vaccine anytime you can. But the truth is, vaccines will not solve the problem. This is a very serious issue, and it's not going to go away in a few months. Or everybody is, counting down. You see a lot of counting down. The British did that. Boris Johnson. It's 30 days to Freedom Day, and this whole thing to try to, it's like the old cars that when you couldn't, the battery was run out, and you put it in
a slope,
in a slope, and then the wheels turn on the cars. This is what the government is trying. Turning with the stock market, with the Freedom Day, with anything they can do, with any countdown. Yes, we'll go to space. No, this is the whole idea, and the problem is disappointment. How will people deal with the inevitable disappointment?
As usual, not very uplifting, but interesting. Some of these questions that come up, I think we'll see the answer to them in the upcoming month, but we'll keep analyzing and discussing stuff from a philosophical point of view, I'm sure. We're out of time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Florencio.
If you enjoyed the video, please like it, comment and subscribe.